Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. I have a microphone now, at least for some of these videos, so hopefully that's going to help you guys out a little bit. Today we're going to talk about what is the best place in Bulgaria to live in, and we'll kind of go through some thoughts on that. Before we get started, click the subscribe button if you haven't already. Click the like button in the video if you like it. If you don't, tell me in the comments how much you hate it. Tell me how to improve, etc. Happy to receive the feedback. And let's get started. Okay, so as I'm sitting here, I am in Sofia, Bulgaria, which is the capital city of Bulgaria, for those of you who have not been here. And I was having some interesting conversations with someone, as well as just kind of thinking about it as we were traveling. We went out to the coast for a week and things like this, about where it is that, oh, nice, water's turning on. Okay, so about where the best place is to live in Bulgaria. And I had some comments, I think it was yesterday, in the comments section of one of the videos, asking about some of the smaller towns like Bansko. I was discussing with somebody who is a native Bulgarian. He was commenting about Burgas. I have some other friends who live in Burgas. And then when I first came here, we were also looking at Varna and had some conversations with people around that. Some other people we know live in Plovdiv. Some people tend to like Plovdiv quite a bit. So this is kind of, if you were to come to Bulgaria, your options would typically be, okay, Sofia, the capital city, Plovdiv, which is fairly close to Sofia. It's kind of in the center of the country. It's quite a kind of university town, has a decent little area of history in it. A lot of people kind of find it a bit more artsy. They tend to like that. Burgas, which is kind of in the southern part of the coast. There's an area called Sunny Beach. There's Nesabar. There's Suzopol. And then Varna is up the northern part of the coast. And so you can kind of get the context here. Sofia is certainly by far the biggest of these, followed by, I think, Varna, then Burgas, then Plovdiv. So to give you some context, I would have to have the exact numbers, but I would estimate it's about 1.5-ish million people in Sofia, maybe around 500,000-ish in Varna and Burgas. They're similar size, and maybe like 200,000 in Plovdiv, something like that. Okay, so that kind of gives you some sense of size. And then, of course, the thing that we're talking about is Bansko, and there's kind of some other resort towns. So a lot of people who come here are looking at, hey, listen, is there some property that I can buy out, maybe in the mountains, by some ski hill, something like this. If you want to do that, if that's your thing, then certainly, you can get relatively inexpensive property there. And, if you find that, hey, listen, the mountain life suits you, etc., that's the case. Now, for me, I'm a cities guy because I like conveniences, okay? So I want to be able to, we went out yesterday to a lake nearby, and, it was very nice, go jet skiing and things like this. But to me, even though it's, 40 minutes from Sofia, what if I want to order some good food? I can't do that, right? Here I go on the phone, I get out the Food Panda app, the takeaway app, something like this. I order food, it shows up. If I want to go and get groceries, I can walk out the door and, go and get groceries fairly easily. I can go and access electronics, right? I can go and access, if I want to go to a movie theater or something like that, if I want to get together with people, so on and so forth. All these conveniences matter quite a bit to me in my decision. So everybody has their own value system, of course, right? For me, this is, a big part of my value system. So with that in mind, I would personally not, I never considered doing something like Bansko. I would not consider something like Bansko. I would not consider any of those places just because they don't really meet my criteria. I would have, maybe a house there or an apartment that I would visit, a few weeks at a time, a couple times a year, something like that, if that's kind of your idea. But just thinking about where to live, no, that wouldn't be the thing for me. And then the question is, if you were to have a property like that, would you do it in Bulgaria? I mean, there's lots of other places you could go perfectly, that's another question. For me, the thing is, when you're living in Bulgaria, the idea is to benefit from the things that are beneficial in Bulgaria, which tends to be some of the convenience, right? I did a video recently comparing Belgrade to Sofia and just talking about how Sofia is just there's not bad traffic, it's easy to get around, it's very walkable, infrastructure tends to be good, it's generally easy to form companies and things like this, right? So there's a bunch of things that are pretty good in that regard. If I'm just coming for a short little period of time, I'm not probably becoming tax resident, so that's a little bit different. You know, like it's just a different conversation. So from my standpoint, if you're coming, you should probably be considering one of these 4 cities. Now let's narrow down from those 4 cities. So some people, like I said, like Plovdiv. For me, Plovdiv is a little small. I can tell you that I just generally find, yeah, just places that are too small is not really quite the thing for me. There's a city center area that's kind of nice, but if you just think about, I would tend to be a late night person, so are things open late at night? What are your options at that point in time? What do you have for restaurants? What do you have for gyms? These things are important to me and matter, and maybe they don't for some other people, but for me they do. Second thing is, I travel a lot, and part of the interesting thing for me about Bulgaria is I think it's a useful place to base yourself out of because there's fairly decent flight connections. And if you're not going to be living in a place, like if you're gone for 4 or 5 months out of the year or whatever the number happens to be, then you're paying for a place. And if you're paying a lot, well then, you're paying a lot for a place that's sitting empty, right? Whereas if the cost of living is fairly low, then you're paying, less for a place that's sitting empty, and it's just better, right? So from that standpoint, I do pay a lot of attention to the value of having an airport that's fairly close. And Plovdiv doesn't have this. I would say, I don't know, it's maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours if you were to go from the airport to Plovdiv, like the Sofia airport, which is the nearest one. And that's just, I'm not a morning person in the first place, so if I have a 6 a.m. flight and I have to get up an extra 2 hours earlier to make it to the airport than I would normally, this is a no-go for me. Not interested. So this brings us to Sofia, Varna, Burgas. Now, the obvious advantage of Burgas and Varna is they are on the sea. The weather is better, okay? Weather in Sofia, I mean, I come from Canada, so, the weather is not terribly bad. And, I come from Alberta, where within Canada, the weather is worse than, say, Vancouver or even Toronto, something like that. So in this sense, I'm like, all right, well, it's definitely not ideal, not at all my dream weather. But that being said, it's still, somewhat mild. So the weather is definitely better in Varna. The weather is better in Burgas, and it's nice to be near the water. I would say the absence of water in Sofia, certainly for my wife Tiana, is something that especially bothers her. She comes from Montenegro, from the coast, things like this, and I would say it's just nice to be around, right? So from that standpoint, I think there's a certain appeal there. I don't like kind of crowded touristy places typically. Like granted, I like Barcelona, but I don't like I don't like the crowds part of it. Let's put it that way. So as far as I'm concerned, if you were to cut the number of tourists to 1/3, you'd have a great place that would be slightly better, which is why sometimes I'll visit Paris in the fall rather than the summer and things like this. Okay, so so in that sense, I would never want to be in Sunny Beach. Sunny Beach to me is not really my scene. Nesebar is it's a very nice old town area. It's kind of charming, things like this, but it's not really a place to live. It's a place to go as a tourist and go and check it out, sit, in some restaurant or cafe looking out over the sea, enjoying some seafood. Wonderful, great. But would I want to live in Nesebar? No, Nesebar is kind of this quiet old town area. You could live in, some of the areas around that area, but I just kind of go back to the same problems that I have with in general, like Plovdiv or something, right? Is there's just less stuff. So I'm looking at two things. Two things for me are the deal breakers that make it that I choose Sofia over other places. And again, to each their own on their preferences, right? It's a values-based decision. Everybody has different values. I have some friends, like I said, who live in these other places. Perfectly good. But for me, the flight connections aren't as good, which means if I have to, right now in kind of the whole Corona situation, flight situation is not good. But before that, and kind of in a general working time, there's a lot of direct flights out of Sofia. We've flown to Malaga from here, so you can go Malaga, Marbella, that sort of area. We've flown to Portugal from here. We've flown to Germany from here, to Hungary from here, probably Poland, I think, or not. Yeah, Poland you can fly for sure. Belgrade, of course, London, France. There's a lot of places you can fly from Sofia. there is a lot less places you can fly from Burgas and Varna, and I believe that Burgas is a bunch less than Varna. So right off the bat there, that to me is a major piece. The other major piece is just like I'm talking about these conveniences. When I'm in one of these places, as much as, you know, we were up in Varna, we were staying at a nice resort there, good food, we went to some other nice places, just cool little atmospheric, you're sitting in a garden, it's nice areas, but there's a lot less of those things. And there's a lot less that are open, like, you know, you get to a certain time of day and you're like, well, what's going on? What do I do? You know, especially in the off season. So yeah, okay, if you're in Burgas, you're near Sunny Beach, and it's the middle of the summer, yeah, great. There's a bunch of different things going on, right, in that kind of general region. But what about in the winter? What about even in the fall or the early spring? What's happening there? Not a lot, right? So in that sense, not really for me. So anyway, to each their own. Like I said, you know, choose what it is that you want. In fact, tell me, you know, here's what you think. You know, a bunch of people will say, hey, listen, they don't find Sofia, you know, they have different reservations about Sofia. Fair enough, okay? Share with us what it is that you think, and you'd say, hey, listen, I think here's the best place in Bulgaria to live, and here's why. Tell me, I'd like to hear it, and I'm sure everybody else would like to hear it as well. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it. If you would like some assistance with residency programs, moving someplace, citizenships, forming international structures, reducing your international tax, payment processing, etc., click the link below that's clarity.fm/Michael Rosmer to book a call with me, or check out our websites, offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com. Subscribe to the video, like the video, share it with your friends, and yeah, reach out to us. I'd love to hear from you. Check out some of our other videos, and I will see you guys on the next video.